In today's world, more parents are contemplating the idea of homeschooling. However, many are burdened with pressing concerns. Will my child be able to adjust socially? Can they receive a comprehensive education at home? And am I truly qualified to educate my child? On this episode of the Farm2Table Direct Show, Stewart and Ashley Clouse of Restoration Farms address these critical questions and alleviate the fears surrounding homeschooling. Stewart, Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to just get right into this topic. Of course, we've done this show once before and with a little bit of complication. However, tonight we're going to try to capture lightning in a bottle for the second time. And since we kind of already know a lot about, what your past is, can you share with the audience just a little bit, starting with the number of children you educate or the number of children you have?
Go for it.
So we have 10 children, ages 1.5, basically up to 17.5. So we have a huge age range, and we've homeschooled the entire time that we've been raising our kids. So we've been doing this for a little while.
Right.
Yeah. So I know that you and Stewart was considering this even before you said you knew that you were going to do this even before you guys got married or had children. So can you tell us a little bit about your thought process of getting into it?
Sure. I kind of always had it in my mind for whatever reason that I was going to homeschool. It wasn't a very difficult decision for me. I think because some of the things that were in the textbooks, I already knew from the time I was young that they could be used for just things that are not true exactly. And so it wasn't a hard stretch for me to want to educate my children, especially just knowing how much capacity a baby's brain has, how much ability there is to learn from the time they're very young, and really how much can be taught in, a short period of time.
Yeah.
Right. So
just homeschooled growing up too. So.
Oh yeah. That was a big part of it too. I think that I did have a best friend for about 5 years growing up. And yeah, he was one of 2 homeschooled children in the whole town. And so it was not very common. And it's kind of, early 90s, shut the blinds and do some homeschooling, even though it was starting to get a little less, dangerous, so to speak, government wise. It was still like they were very cautious, as far as homeschooling went.
So, of course, one of the questions that people may be asking is, why didn't you take the easy way out and just send them to public school?
Well, that wouldn't have been as easy for me anyway. My degree is in education. So I would have been teaching. If they were not at home, then I would have gone to teach them at school too. So my background as an educator, like that's what I went to school for. I have a degree in education, elementary and secondary, both different endorsements. So by the time, like before I even graduated, I decided that I was going to homeschool my kids, which a lot of my professors were like blown away about. But seeing the research over and over through the years where they were emphasizing how important it was to get the parental involvement in the classroom, and that was the number one indicator of success, made me realize, okay, something else is going on here. Then you saw over and over again, it had nothing to do with funding of the schools, and then you see the classroom size, and then you see the teaching to the middle that happens, and not reaching these kids as much as I want to reach all the kids in the classroom and really help all of them excel. I can't do that. I can teach most of them fairly well, right? So that was a big thing for me. And then also, being Christians, there were things that we were told that we needed to teach, or that we were going to need to be able to teach in the classroom. And I didn't feel comfortable with my kids learning some of that stuff, or hearing about it from a different worldview from someone else. It's not that we don't talk about a lot of those same things with our kids, but we are the ones talking about it, in a different setting, I guess. So
yeah. And piggybacking off of what she's saying about parental involvement, I taught public school in Dallas for 10 years, and yeah, it was either spoken or all the teachers essentially knew that the best parental involvement, the best family situation, the best home situation, on average, produce the best students. Because a fundamental part of education is relationship, and so what gets strained inside the classroom setting is actually relationship, I think, because as it's been described by some authors, it's like a fishbowl of attention. If you have 25 to 30 students and one adult in the room that can dole out the attention, it's like a fishbowl of attention. And so it's hard to build relationship and hence pass useful knowledge onto those children, because it's hard to get to know that many people in that setting.
Right. So, that goes, kind of along with where we're at there. You talk about the effect in the classroom as far as the interaction between the teacher and the student, but then also between the other students, that whole environment that's created. And so I think that's some of the concern, maybe even that parents have with socialization. If say because y'all have a social environment built in, but if somebody has one child, or maybe that social interaction and that social development of social skills, as a concern, and so what's some things maybe to alleviate that?
Well, I think. Oh, you're gonna go ahead.
I want to say one thing. I'll let her say, but I want to ask the viewers honestly. Okay, we have 10 children. How much do you think they lack in socialization? Meaning they actually play with each other and they actually do things together. There's a lot of social interaction.
So, but his concern is valid. Like,
yes.
Okay, if you have one kid, how are you making sure? So one thing that we pointed out a different time when we were talking, Ryan, was how that was what we got in trouble for in school, was socializing. That was what was not allowed.
Sure.
Big trouble for socializing, so even the just thinking about school, are you actually socializing that much? That's not actually what school is for. School is for learning, right? When you're homeschooling, you don't have to stay at home, and that's not the goal of most people's homeschooling. Now, there are some homeschoolers that are like, we're going to stay home all day and do nothing in the community, and that's not ideal, in the same way that being in the classroom all the time and never leaving the classroom is not ideal.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, so if you're going places, kids are exposed to social situations, and it's not just, it's all age groups, because after you left school, how often did you only interact with people that were born the exact same year with you?
It's
Right.
silly,
Yeah.
right?
You don't do that in life.
True.
And actually, the research also shows that the old schoolhouses where they have mixed age groups and several different age groups inside the same
Right.
room, like a one schoolhouse, it actually has more depth in the learning, because the younger children, they can listen into the higher order thinking. They'll catch parts of it. They won't understand it to the depth of abstraction that the older students will, but they're getting that understanding. They can hear things and pick up on it in their own way. Conversely, older students, they'll hear what's going on in the young grades, and they'll hear the basics being repeated. So I went to for my middle school years, a Christian school that was very small, only 13 kids, but I really cherished that experience in the basement of that church, because it was such a unique experience having that blend of educations going on. Now, that's not the way we structure it at our house. I'm just giving an example that a lot of learning can happen in situations that don't model the typical public school classroom.
Okay. Well, that's a big
So-
deal. Yeah. Go ahead, bro.
I just wanted to say, I believe it's Chris from
Yes.
the Surviving in Alabama channel. This is, wait, y'all have 10 kids? Yes, Chris, they
Yes,
do.
they do.
And they educate 10 children. So they're uniquely qualified to speak about the homeschooling issue, having 10 children that they successfully are homeschooling. So I just want to get a little bit into the social stigmatism, at least the stigmatism that used to exist. Okay. And so I just want to read something and show something. Can I get cut one there, Mr. P? Thank you.
Yeah.
And this is from the National Home Education Research Institute. And I'm just going to read this. It said the homeschool population had been growing at an estimate of 2 to 8% per annum over the past several years, but it grew drastically from 2019 to 2020. Now, with that being said, prior to that time, and I don't think that it's necessary to say what happened and why maybe you've seen that growth, take off there. But with that in mind, a lot of parents in the past used to fear or they faced judgment or criticism from family, friends, and just society in general for choosing to homeschool. What do you guys think? Has that declined somewhat since, let's say, 2020?
Yeah.
Substantially
Mhm.
since 2020. Even before that, though, like you were saying on that graph, homeschooling was becoming much more common. The
Mm-hmm.
stigmatism, the stigma about homeschooling when we started versus even 5 years ago was way different. People, before, people were kind of, now almost everyone is really positive. We don't typically get questions about anything unless it's, oh, what curriculum do you use? Like, they want to know a little bit more about how we structure it, but it's not like, oh no, you can't
Mhm.
possibly, are you doing enough? Let me quiz your kids,
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely see the stigma has dropped. And one reason is because a lot of parents had to do school at home during 2020. So it wasn't true
Right.
homeschooling where they were creating the curriculum or whatever, but they got to see it. And so that took some of that away.
Right. It's yeah. Go ahead and get that with from Jessica there. Keith.
Right. She says, first time parent here. Did you start homeschooling from your first child, or did you do public school first and change your mind?
We've always
I'll let y'all have that.
we've always homeschooled. We've always homeschooled.
Yeah.
And so we got married, and, years before our first one would have had to go to public school. I do you even remember the conversation? I think it was just kind of like
We're gonna homeschool,
we
right?
brought it up one day. We're like, we're going to homeschool, right? And it was like, yeah. And so that was literally it. And, we just went from there. And that sounds really weird, I think, to a lot of people, but that's just what we've done.
Right.
Right. So the academic quality, some are fearing that they may not be able to provide the same level of education, as a traditional school, especially in subjects where they might not have expertise, potentially affecting their child's future academic and career opportunities. What would you guys say about that?
It's a good concern to have. It shows that they're thinking about their kids' education and their welfare and so forth. The research actually bears out that homeschooled children consistently do several years better advanced academically than their public school counterparts. And so that's in ACT score, SAT score. Colleges, in spite of what, you may have the perception, colleges are actually very interested in homeschool students. Harvard admitted that they reject 4 out of 5 valedictorians. You might think GPA is the only thing that matters, but they actually want other things. They want a well-rounded individual with maybe an academic skill, like a social skill, and a physical skill, somebody that's more well-rounded. And, that consistently shows up with homeschooled children. And you may be thinking, hey, I'm not qualified, but the research also shows that, contrary to what you may think, educated parents, the research showed, did worse sometimes than people who were not college educated.
Didn't even have diplomas.
Didn't go to college. And I think what this bears out is that our system for how, education happens and so forth must be pretty flawed, where, it's something simpler, something to do with relationships, something to do with talking, to draw out information, there's something different in the paradigm.
So
Right.
one thing also to take some pressure off of parents is that you are not responsible necessarily for teaching every single thing that your kid learns. You are responsible for making sure that the right teachers or the right curriculums or the right books, whatever, are in front of your kiddos so that they have the opportunities to learn. That's what you're responsible for. If you really can't explain something to your kiddo, then you find someone. That's what your responsibility is. And so that really takes a lot of pressure off. But most of us are more than qualified to teach our kids, and we teach them all these other things before they get to preschool or kindergarten or whatever, that, to walk and talk and all of that stuff. Like we're helping them learn those skills. You can help them learn other skills also.
Right. And I think one of the keys is learning the skills and ideas in context. So as you do them in your life, and, whether that's mathematics and, making recipes or whatever it happens to be, you can incorporate it. And I think if parents have a good framework for how to incorporate education just in everyday activities that they could easily explain to their child and help grow their understanding, then, you can really go a lot of places from there.
Well, I should say it goes to something that, we said the last time when my dad taught me fractions. He used a ruler or measuring tape, and automotive sockets, things that I used every day with him to get that light bulb to come in on how to do fractions.
Real world, right?
Bro, you want to go ahead and read that?
And if you're
again, this is from Chris from Surviving in Alabama, and he said we homeschooled ours, and 3 of 4 have went on to graduate from Auburn, and 2 have master's degrees and still have 1 in high school. And I've just got one thing to ask Chris: is the next one going to go to Alabama?
Right.
I'm just ribbing you, bro. So,
hey, no,
Tide.
that's, but you and we'll get back into this. Thanks, Chris, for that. For just that input into that kind of helps show a little bit more of the point about how qualified they really are coming out of a homeschool environment. But we talked about the parents and their confidence. But one of the fears, I think, and I know it's changed, and we're going to talk about it, is lack of support and worry and resources, worrying about the availability of like support groups or educational resources and even extracurricular activities, for kids to be able to go do.
So we live in a town of 800 or less, and
Right.
there's band, there's archery, there's all different kinds of sports groups within 30 minutes of where we are.
And there's homeschool groups and
there's
families
co-ops.
all over the
Yeah.
place around us. It's really,
Right.
I mean, if you
don't have to go it alone. There's no reason to.
Right.
I mean, you need support, you need community, but
Right. So I guess the question is, has internet and social media helped bridge that gap?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Would
so
you say
easy
that
to
you
connect
get-
with.
Right.
Would you say that you get support from just the local community, or are there actually support groups online? Even if you don't, take advantage of that, are there support groups for homeschooling parents online that they can be involved in?
Oh, so many groups. I'm not involved with as many big groups that aren't local as I was when I first started,
Mhm.
because I've been able to
Mhm.
plug in and there are a lot more available locally. But yes, there's so
Mhm.
many options. And there's so many resources for helping you too, not just like other people, but just free resources online too.
Right.
Right. So, I want to get a little bit into the fear of the parents' qualification. They may fear that their teaching ability is not where it ought to be. And to be fair, you guys are teachers, not, you were teachers by your education, and you have the heart of a teacher. And so, what would you say to those parents out there that, are fearing that?
I would say, yeah, that we are unique and that there's no reason that you have to be a teacher like we are in order to teach your children things. You are the one who loves your children and has their best interests at heart more than anyone else in the world. You know them better than anyone else, and and you want the best for them, right? Like I just said. So you are qualified to teach them things. And like before, you don't have to be their only teacher, but you have to be the one to initiate things and get them to the places that you get them to the education or the teachers or whatever that they need to learn the things. It doesn't have to all be on you, but also you are teaching them all kinds of things already. And you probably are way more capable than you feel like you are. Would you agree?
One of the questions.
Right.
Go ahead. Well, as I said, one of the questions in the chat is Jessica Preston. She came up, about being overwhelmed with the options of curriculum, how to pick a simple one.
And what I'd say on that is, I see this maybe a little differently than some people, but the world has a million subjects in it. We tend to think of academic subjects as what we were presented with when we went to school, which is, social studies and, science and math and English, whatever, your basics. And yes, you need that framework, but there's so many subjects. And we know that if you have children, each one is different from the other one. And they've got their own unique interests and abilities. And when you encourage them in those directions, then the learning really begins to grow and develop. So you can have somebody who studies one thing very intently, but through that study of that one subject intently, they learn about a whole sphere of other things that are all connected to it. Because anything you start learning, it's connected to other things. And so I think that's the beauty of it. Whatever, a child has their interests, and you can encourage them in their learning.
Yep.
Even if you don't know the subject yourself, you don't have to.
Right. That's what libraries are for.
Right.
You learn together.
So not to be overwhelmed with all the options, like Jessica specifically is asking. There are some cool quizzes online that you can kind of get the feel of your family, because our homeschool is going to look totally different than yours because it's a different group of people, different size and different personalities, different schedules, all of that kind of stuff. So you can find those quizzes online that go through some of the styles to help you figure out what kinds of curriculum are going to work better for your family. But my guess was, or I mean, my recommendation is not to go like buy an entire box set for now forever.
Right.
Just try a couple pieces to see if something resonates with your family, if it's going to work, and don't feel afraid to drop it if it doesn't, and try something different.
Right.
Don't feel like you have to cover every piece in every curriculum, because as a school teacher, we never did that. We picked and chose what we wanted out of curriculums and textbooks and all that stuff, and what we could actually cover. So yeah, start figuring out kind of what is important to your family. And then just worry about the basics, and the rest is fun. So make sure that you cover reading, writing, and arithmetic, just so that you can do basic computations. You can write and you can read, because then you can learn other things, right? Those basic skills that you can master, and then the subjects open themselves up for you.
And just a quick note, one of the common feared subjects is mathematics, right? And so, but it's been shown with as little as 50 contact hours one-on-one with the child, they can learn the base of mathematics for what they need to go into any other field of mathematics that they'd like to study, to provide that framework. In the same way that you can read any book once you learn how to read, right? You can learn to read, and then you read to learn. So in the same way, if you provide that framework in a certain subject area, it doesn't take as many hours as you would think. In fact, there's lots of studies that show that can be cut even further down. Studies that show first 20 hours is where you learn 90% of the information a lot of times about a certain subject that you will eventually learn, because the growth curve is so high at the beginning because it's so new. So it takes less time than you may originally think.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that's important. And I know each child is different. So when I bring this up, as far as, a child's motivation and their self-discipline a little bit, as far as how they stay motivated and engaged without that typical structure that we're used to thinking of in traditional education.
Right.
So yeah, our homeschool is not, so like he was saying, it takes far less time. When you have a set amount of time that you have to occupy in public school, you fill the entire time. You only let people go to the bathroom then, and then the bell rings and you artificially stop and you have to go to the next class or to the next subject.
Right.
Like at home, if we're gardening, then we can talk about all the different things. We're talking about days to maturity. We're talking about freeze time dates, and like all these different kinds of sciencey things. It's a monocot or a dicot, there's a lot that you can talk about while you're doing things. And that is considered school. It doesn't have to be sitting down with a book or a worksheet. It can be, but it doesn't have to be like that.
Right. And continuing on, like with the gardening, as they get older, or even a lot of them really young, they want to know, how much can I produce, with this number of plants, how much could I sell that for? And you get into financials and all that. It's like, there's so many avenues you could take it. And that type of learning is in no less way rigorous or, quality than what you would receive in a public school setting, because you actually have, physical things that you're doing, and you're providing the inputs and you're seeing the results. And so it's like a real-time education. There's a lot of learning that just takes place in the process of doing an activity.
Right. As educators, like one of the big things that they pushed us is give real world examples and activate all of the senses that you possibly can. It's
right.
What was the catch of that? It's kinesthesiology,
Yeah,
but using your
TPR.
TPR, that's what it was.
Total physical response, to where you connect the physical movement with the actual learning that takes place in your mind. So when you do those movements again, then it triggers the learning in your mind.
So you try to do these artificially as a teacher in a classroom, but that's exactly what homeschooling is. You're learning as you're cooking, as you're gardening, as you're doing all these things, and you're talking about it.
And if you want to dive further into one of those subjects, then there's all sorts of resources on the internet in the form of videos, in the form of digital books, libraries in the form of books. There's just so many things. We're drowning in information. We just have to find the good sources of it.
Right.
Right. And
know, you
for
guys use YouTube.
the sake of the audience, I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, I just said I know you guys use YouTube to learn things, right? We call it YouTube U.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can learn all kinds of things there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So I was going to say, just for the sake of the people that's listening that may not know, Stewart and Ashley has a channel called Restoration Farms. They have a 10-acre farm. So when they're talking about outdoor activities, with farming, gardening, and wild edibles and that sort of thing, this is kind of what they're referring to. Um,
Mhm.
so we just got finished talking about, the different children and, their self-discipline and I wanted to get in a little bit about, and I think we've already touched on this,
Yeah.
and that is how prepared they are for, uh, higher learning.
So each family is going to be different on what they would like their kids to be prepared for, and what exactly is important to them.
Mhm.
And so that's whatever that goal is, then you work toward that goal. For our family, we're not necessarily pushing all of them to go to college. If that's something that's important to them and what they want to do, then yes, we're preparing them. They'll be ready. They read a lot. They can, we keep track of their transcripts through high school so that they can go to college if that's what they want to do. We want them to be successful. Like we were saying, there's so much information available. We don't want them to think that they have to only go to school. A lot of our peers that went to college are still $40,000, $100,000 in debt, and we're 40, so that means they've been out of school for 20 years.
Mhm.
And they're still that far in debt from college, and they're not even using their degrees. So if our
Right.
kids have, like we will encourage them to, pursue that, and we're preparing them for that success, but it's also not as high of a priority to us as we thought it would be at this point.
And yeah. And as far as them being prepared for higher learning, college, like going back to those stats from earlier, it's going to carry on. So if they're consistently several years ahead of their public school counterparts, once they get to college age, then they are, at a higher level. I mean, I can say pretty much unequivocally that the smartest children I've met are homeschooled, or the most open-minded, free-thinking people I've met are people who are homeschooled or who homeschool their children. Because, in a way, you have to recognize that, what we're being told is not correct. And instead of constantly having to fight it every single day, you can do something about it, and you can make it actually easier on yourself in the long run, if you don't agree with what you see happening.
Yeah.
So do you find that there is a problem, in America and probably outside of America, with schools teaching children what to think and not how to think?
Oh, sure. It's, I mean, as much as we were taught to teach the kids critical thinking, we also taught to the
Mhm.
tests and exactly what the tests wanted them to think, like it
Right.
Mhm. Okay.
every teacher and every school system has its own biases and its own goals, right? And even as parents, we have our own biases and our own goals, and we're, but we also, like we said, have the best interest of our kids, at heart. Not that teachers are bad. Teachers
That's right.
a lot of times are awesome people,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
really want to succeed and do well, but they have 30 kids, or if they're teaching multiple subjects, 150 kids a day. They do not have the time or energy or resources to really reach each kiddo like they would like to.
And I want to say this real fast in case there's any confusion about it. Teaching there in the public school, please don't get me wrong. There are also some of the smartest kids I've ever met in the public school. They're in that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying when the form of education is different, you can really tell a difference. That I still keep up with some of the old students I have. I'm not denigrating public school students. Or anything like
Right.
that, or the teachers. That's not my purpose. But it's to say there is a different sort of quality, open-mindedness, and actually desire to learn, because learning that's done under compulsion is seldom retained. Like if you've got to teach to a test and then you learn and cram before the test happens, boom, learning drops off. You never really retain it. You were forced to learn it. You didn't know why you were learning it. But if you want to learn something and you keep pursuing it, you are much, much more likely to retain it and become excellent with it.
Yeah, that is an amazing and a great point. And I want to ask you a question, guys. You know, in public school, because you guys have experienced it, are they beholden to higher powers that tell them what they have to teach?
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Yes.
And it depends on the location of the school, the district, and the state, and all of that, what that's going to look like. So in Dallas, that is a whole huge district. And so what they wanted was curriculum that came, and every teacher at every school in every classroom was teaching basically the same thing on the same days. And so that doesn't allow teachers to adjust for their students or their personality or anything. So that, yes, in that way. Now some of the small school districts, they have a lot more freedom. They might be the only one teaching their subject, so they get to pick and choose. So there are some differences, but also there's always the state standards for particular subjects that you have to meet, and so there is something like that. And you can look them up for any state. You can go to the Oklahoma State Board of Education and look up what their standards are by grade level, by quarter, all those kinds of things, and see if that's something that concerns you as a parent. You can see if your kids are on target, if you're worried about that, and see what they would be learning in public school.
Interject for just a second. I know we were talking about, kind of that where they're ready. And in our previous conversations, y'all had mentioned, and I know I've heard the same thing, where particularly those who want to go into like trade school stuff or, different things, where there's programs where they're coming out of what would be traditionally high school age, already certified, already in an apprenticeship, or already, certified for something.
Right.
Yeah, that's available to people here in Oklahoma. I'm sure there are programs other places, but some of our teens, that's what they want to do, is they want to go to trade school. They can start when they're 16 and they can graduate at 18 with their certificate in whatever particular trade that they wanted to go in.
Right.
So pretty cool.
So we're going to talk a little bit about time and resource management.
Yeah,
one of the biggest concerns. What's that?
Well, as I said, they brought that up with the teachers and how time and resources are just a limited quantity.
Right. And that's right. However, the twist on that that I have is that a lot of parents, and myself included, is like, how much of a time commitment on the parent would that be? And how do you guys handle that? Or, talk to somebody who says, man, that's going to require a lot of my time. And maybe, they have to work and do all of those things. Now, I'm not, later we're going to be getting into the financial section of that, but just pretty much address the part about their fear of time commitment to that.
So you can go online and you can see the charts for kindergarten at Homeschool. It's like 30 minutes a day. So read out loud to your kids, do some hands-on activities, and that's that's enough seat work for the day. And then as they get bigger or older, then it might be longer. But even in high school, just a few hours is sufficient to cover their schooling time.
Right. So really, actually, let's just kind of know, how compressed really the time that is actually dedicated to sitting down and saying, okay, we need to talk about this versus just being involved with the kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not, and that time as they get older doesn't have to be necessarily you one-on-one time teaching either, because once you've taught them those basic skills of reading and writing and arithmetic, then they
Right.
can do self-directed learning. So their seat work could take them a very short amount of time if it's something they're interested in, and it's something, like you're pushing, okay, you have to do this today. Here's, you need to be through this lesson. Some kids can get through this much more quickly, and some kids are going to stretch it out all day because they don't really care, and
Yeah.
that's part of homeschooling too. If that's what they want to spend their time doing, whatever, as long as they've done their other chores or,
Yeah.
whatever. But
And just another note on that, though, is when you actually look at the studies on how much learning time or instruction time takes place in the public school, it's kind of crazy, because you've got this whole time period. The students start showing up at 8 o'clock or 8:30, whatever it is. They leave at 4:30. But that's the edges of it, and then there might be 7 class periods, and so a 5-minute transition time between each one of those. That's 35 minutes out of the day. Then you've got a lunch period. That's 30 minutes, except the transition times are 5 minutes on each side of that. And then, they got to sit down in their seats. They got to get materials. They've got to have independent time that they can work on it after it's been explained. There's interruptions. All this to say that it's kind of an illusion that students are sitting there. I mean, it really is an illusion that they're sitting there for 7 hours learning all day. That's not what happens. There's actually, even for very good teachers, there's only so much you can put in a 90-minute section or in a 45-minute section as far as learning goes. And so it really is just, the interest of the child and the exposure to it on a consistent basis that promotes the learning.
Right.
Okay, I would also just add there, since we're talking about time and resource management, you've got 10 children. Are they part of your resource to help teach the others as they're stepping through?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is something that that you've probably heard before, but if you can explain it to someone else, that shows that you've actually mastered or you understand a subject. So we explain this to our kids, that this is a skill. Being able to speak and communicate well is a skill. And so we want you to do that. Or practice reading aloud with the other kids. They're not solely responsible for any of their siblings' education, but part of that is doing that. We even did this in public school, where we had buddies that we would go read out loud to, or, things like that, where we'd go help them with their homework. But you see the benefit of that, because these older kids see that they have a skill that they can teach. They have value that is not just, like, oh, you did a good job. They have something worth communicating, worth sharing with someone else, and they get to see somebody else learn from them. That's really, really important. Like it, it gives them confidence too. So there is that,
Right. And I
and
would
sometimes
say
they just want to.
Oh, yeah, they like doing it.
And they want to explain.
That's good.
They're like, oh no, did you hear about this? Yeah.
So, teaching is learning because it reinforces what you've learned. Would you agree with that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so say mathematics example, you might have some older children who know all the times tables, right? Or they can just go through flashcards with the younger kids to learn arithmetic, and it's fun for both parties involved, you know what I mean? Or they like showing the learning, of their younger kids, even if it's like the little toddler, and look what words she said, and they're teaching her things. It's it doesn't have to be as formal or as challenging as you might think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Go ahead, bro.
Well, I was going to say, you may be pulling it up. I was going to say, Jessica Oliver said when she was a preschool teacher, she absolutely seen a difference between children with siblings and without siblings. Children with siblings were usually more outgoing and advanced.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I can
observation at that level, even, at a young age.
Okay.
Yes.
So at this particular juncture, we're about to get into the financial impact, because I know that is a large concern with a lot of parents, that may be having, each one of them have a job and their ability to be home to do that. But before we do, we are going to get a little bit of a word from our sponsor, Ryan.
Absolutely. Are you ready for the freshest cup of coffee you've ever tasted? Well, welcome to Farm to Table Direct Coffee, your destination for specialty coffee roasted to perfection. At Farm to Table Direct Coffee, we offer a wide variety of premium coffee beans. Unlike the commodity coffee that is on the shelves at most stores, our beans are hand-picked for ripeness. Available in several packaging options to suit your needs, just like this bag right here of 12-ounce coffee beans straight from the roaster. Guess what? The process is simple. Place your order and our expert roasters get to work. Your coffee is roasted and shipped the very same day, ensuring peak freshness and flavor. And I tell you, it could not be easier. From placing the order, you receive notifications throughout the process. Farm to Table Direct Coffee keeps you informed every step of the way. For the freshest custom roasted coffee, visit our store at farm2tabledirect.com. That is farm2tabledirect.com, and experience the difference that Farm to Table Direct Coffee can make in your morning routine. Farm to Table Direct Coffee, from the farm to your table, the freshest coffee guaranteed.
Stuart, do you have a
Thank you
review
for that, Ryan. Yeah.
I,
We're going to get
I
into
think
the
it's
financial impact.
the coffee. It was excellent.
Thank you. Well, I do happen to know that you've quit coffee, or at least the last I heard, you kind of quit coffee, which, you have your reasons for that. And me, I haven't
No way.
found the.
I'm back on it.
Oh, you fell off the wagon. Okay. I don't know if there's
Yes.
a coffee anonymous or not, but maybe there should be.
Fell off the bean
But
truck.
for me, I wouldn't go anyway because I love it.
No, yeah.
So getting back into to the topic here, again, we're talking about easing the fears of homeschooling for those who might be on the fence about homeschooling, who are struggling with homeschooling right now, and some of the things that that you can do to alleviate some of those fears. And one of the biggest fears is the financial concerns that they're going to have. They're concerned about the potential financial burden of homeschooling, such as the cost of education materials, lost income if a parent reduces work hours and stops working, and other associated costs. Now, I do happen to know that in the beginning of y'all's journey, Stewart, you worked and Ashley stayed home teaching, but then you eventually made the decision also that you no longer work in the educational system. And so both of you are both in on that. How in the world do you survive?
Well,
God's grace. So
God's
as far
grace,
as
okay.
educating, you do not need to spend a bunch of money. There's not a whole lot of resources necessary. You need a library card or a good shelf of used books from the thrift store to start reading with your kiddos. Like that's one of the biggest things. It's a huge indicator of success in children is if they're read to consistently growing up. So expose them to lots of books and read to them. That's huge. You can go online and find tons of free resources. Most libraries have lots of programs that are free that you can participate in. Just learning activities, STEM activities, all kinds of things. There's whole curriculums free online, like Ambleside Online is a whole structured curriculum that you can get for free and find the resources. Now, it doesn't contain all of the books that you need, but it gives you links to a lot of them that are public domain books, or it tells you where you can find them, or you can request them from your library. Don't be afraid to use that library. It's there so that we can use it. You can do interlibrary loans, all kinds of things to get resources for your kiddos. So that as far as the curriculum part goes, it doesn't have to cost anything if you don't want it to. If you want, if you have a bigger budget, there are a lot of cool things that you can get. But our public library, we can go to the maker room. We can use their 3D printer, their embroidery machines. We can check out tools and exercise equipment, all kinds of learning games and activities. Like there's just tons of stuff that we can check out there. So if you're in a bigger community, that's Tahlequah. It's not like a huge library. But if you're in a bigger community, there are probably a lot of resources available to you that you're not even aware of.
Yep. And I think sometimes we think it's expensive to educate because we're constantly told that, hey, if the money, then our education scores, and our turnout would be better. Like if we just had more money. And already the inner city school district, like 20 years ago, we're getting something like $15,000 to $18,000 per child per year. And, if you multiply that out, it was 15,000 times 12 years, it's $180,000. And I mean, I just posed the question to you, how much does it cost to learn? How much does it cost to learn? My parents did not have much money growing up. And you know what? We have books. They got me encyclopedias. They got me books. And, there's all sorts of resources, for relatively cheap, or free. There's lots of them, like she's mentioning, whether online or in printed form.
Right. And a lot of used homeschooling bookstores, like if you're in the Tulsa area, you can go to Bibliomania and they have used curriculum inexpensively. And there are a lot of other homeschool swap groups and stuff where you can swap books or you can sell them secondhand to other people. So there's a lot of ways to make it cheaper or inexpensive.
Right.
Yeah.
We did have a question in the chat. Go ahead, Stewart.
It may have just gone out of my mind, but you can go ahead into the question.
Okay. One of the questions was about financial help with homeschooling. It's from Jessica, about grants or resources to help with like food or educational books, etc. Or are you 100% financially responsible?
So it depends on what state you are in, what resources are available. When you accept state money, there are regulations that come with that. So you have to decide if that's what you want as a family, to be required to do certain things or report to certain people about certain things. In Oklahoma, the laws are wide open. They do have a new homeschool financial incentive thing. We're not going to be participating. It is available. You can read all about it from different homeschoolers here in the state, and the Oklahoma Homeschool Coalition. I think it's okay. I'm not positive on that. I'll drop it in the chat after we're done. But yeah, you can find out more about the pros and cons of those things, whether you want to receive that money to get, and some of it has really tight stipulations. There are also online schools, virtual schools that are free, like Epic and some of these other ones, but they are public school at home. It's not parents choose and it's homeschooling. It's a little different. You have things that you have to follow and you have set teachers, and they do provide resources for extracurricular activities, but there are strings attached. So yeah, there are options to help. But yeah, it has to be, you have to decide if that's a good fit for your particular family and what you believe and what you want to be doing with those finances.
Okay.
Yeah,
she said very good information.
So, about the financial side of it, I'm not going to dig into y'all's finances or anything like that. I don't think that's fair. But I think that it's a fair question about how a parent handles the idea that they may have to sacrifice, especially if they're used to living at a certain higher standard, and then maybe one of the parents are, So, I mean, something to kind of alleviate, that fear or address the value of that.
Well, what typically happens a lot of times, even, in a 2-income family, if they have children, is that a lot of that money from the second job goes to daycare, or some type of service for the child,
after school care
or whatever else, and so, I think it's Larry Burkett, he had showed studies on this that say that actually a 2-income family, husband and wife actually makes very similar or less if they're making, minimum wage, not minimum wage, if they're making the average for the American household. And so if you consider the extra insurance, the extra vehicle, the extra clothing, the extra eating out, all those things, they chip into it. And then you've got to get childcare and a number of things. So a lot of times, I believe if you look at the financials, you can figure out, oh, wow, this isn't going to be as difficult as we were thinking.
Yeah. And there's a lot of options as far as flexibility with employment. After 2020, a lot of jobs stayed virtual. Right. So parents can be at home with their kids while their kids are doing other things. And then they, have short engagement times with them or whatever throughout the day. There's a lot of different options. It doesn't mean that in order to homeschool that you have to have one parent home full time all the time. There are a lot of people that work full time and still homeschool their kids. That sounds like, how could that be possible? But remember, we're talking those short hours is all that is needed to actually do that structured education time. And maybe they have other childcare during the other times or whatever, but it's possible even if you both have to work full time to actually homeschool. It's going to be harder with younger kids, unless you can stagger you and your spouse's work schedules or whatever. Or you can get help from family members or friends that homeschool their kids and are willing to take your kids part-time, and then you teach them something that from your work. That's kind of the way our homeschool co-ops or classes that we have here on the farm are. There's things that we know and we can teach, and then our kids also have gone out to Long Shadows Ranch and learned about beekeeping or fossils or whatever they happen to be teaching out there. You don't have to do it all yourself. You can find other people to collaborate with like that.
Yeah, because really everybody's a teacher. Everybody has something that they know a lot better than the majority of people. You can think about what that thing is for you probably automatically, like, what do I know how to do better than most people, or what am I good at? Everybody's got that thing. And so, everybody can be a teacher too. It's not just that the teacher is only the one certified by the government that has a license that said, oh, you can teach now, other people can't teach. That's silly. We all have something that we can teach, and so you find those people that can either fill in those gaps or, push you further.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, at this point, it would be good to mention that all of us here are involved with the homesteading community, and that we find an awful lot of support within that community, because there's just a lot of people willing to share knowledge here. And I know that, part of, the success of the Farm2Table Direct Show depends on a lot of the knowledge that experts have out there, because we're not experts in everything, and so, join a homesteading community, get into the homesteading community if you're not already. And with that being said, Bro, do you have something else you want to?
Well, we can get into that. I was just going to say, that it's, even following us here, I mean, there's not an episode, there's not an interview, there's not somebody we sit down with, or even an expo that we go to that we don't learn.
That's right.
We just did rainwater catchment last week, and I was learning stuff all the way through the show. So, I mean, it's that constant state of learning. And, whether you're going to homestead or not, because not everybody's going to do that. Get involved around that community, these events, these expos, these channels, because they're constantly teaching, they're constantly sharing information, and they want people to be involved and learn that. So, I mean, that's definitely, a thing. And since my brother led into it, here we will go. We've got a lot coming up in the next several weeks. We've had Stewart and Ashley on now twice, but much better setup this time, I think, with our audio issues we were facing last time. But coming up next week, July 9th, and I'm going to mess this name up, I know it, but it's David Thoming. I hope that's right. Thoming. Anyway, he is with Arrowhead Land and Finance. He's one of the sponsors, and speakers down at the Oklahoma Homestead Rendezvous. He's going to be coming up next week, July 9th, 7 o'clock, right here on the Farm to Table Direct Show. Now, over the next few weeks, we have Dwayne Hall with Red Feather Farms. We got Amanda, Red Feather Farms.
Yeah, Red Feather.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Amanda Hardcastle with HLC Longhorns. Susan Gonzalez from Secret Garden Farms. Monty Shrunk, Suburban Sodbuster. Many of y'all, I said, know him. I've seen him out at the expos. Morgan Hedricks with Wild Root Country Store. Lauren Denny from Simply Country Ranch. And Holly and David Lacey from Glory Hills Farmstead. And I know we have another one that's going to be jumping in there somewhere. We just got to get that locked down on a final date. Now, where can you see the Farm to Table Direct Show live? Not only, of course, yes, Stewart and Ashley, great. Restoration Farms, they're going to be at the Oklahoma Homestead Rendezvous as well, speaking there on this very subject of homeschooling. So, again, worth coming out to. And I know that they're going to be out and about there, and they are always got something cooking in their little area over there. Now, what it'll be, we don't know. We'll have something going on. But anyway, so speaking of where you find the Farm to Table Direct Show, that is the Farm the Number Table 2 Direct Show, out and about to meet in person. We will be at the Ozark Homestead Expo in Marshfield, Missouri, September 6th and 7th at the Webster County Fairground. You can get tickets and info at ozarkhomesteading.com. Be sure to book a place to stay early because Springfield is the nearest city to find hotels. So the advice I was given was to book early. So we will be out there, and the lineup on that you can see at ozarkhomesteading.com. I know that Joel Salatin is there, Zach Bauer. I know that Bo is going to be there. Bo Brown, who does wild edibles and stuff in the Ozark. I've done a walkthrough with Bo. That was pretty cool. And them guys, over there, if you want to walk through, go to Restoration Farms, reach out to them. They can come out to your place, help you out with that. And they, from what I hear, they do a great job. I know Lorraine really enjoyed it when y'all came out to her place. But anyway, Urban Homestead Expo in Oklahoma City at the Oklahoma State Fair, September 15th. Entry is included with the price admission to the fair. It is being hosted by our friends at Hidden Heights Farm and Keeping It Dutch. They were asked to put that on. That is a very specialized lineup focusing solely on urban homesteading, things you can do living in an urban environment. But that comes with the price of the fair admission. So you can go out, have a good time at the fair, and get to go hang out with some cool homesteaders. We'll be there in support, not in cover. They'll be there. That's right. Stewart and Ashley will be there. So,
we're vending.
Good place
we'll
to see.
have a table.
Yeah, a lot of people going to be there. It's going to be a wild day. Now, the one we've been talking about and what this whole speaker series leads to is the Oklahoma Homestead Rendezvous in McAllister, Oklahoma at the Southeast Expo Center on September 27th and 28th. And we're a sponsor of this event. We'll also be speaking. Of course, we've already said Stewart and Ashley will be speaking. And everybody that we've got in our speaker series coming up all the way through September will be speakers and presenters there at the Oklahoma Homestead Rendezvous. You can get more information on their Facebook page, Oklahoma Homestead Rendezvous. The website is coming soon, but it is not up yet. Chris jumped in briefly earlier and said that she could not stay with us tonight, but told us, say hi. But anyway, so if you're out at any of these events, come say hi to us. We'd love to visit and meet you all face to face. We'll be the ones with the Farm to Table Direct Show t-shirts. Yeah, that little logo up there in my head, up above my head there. Anyway, so yeah, that's it for what I got for events and upcomings and all that good fun stuff. So is there any further comments going on that before we close this on out of here?
I just want to take a minute to, thank Stewart and Ashley for being patient with us and coming back in. They were so gracious to share time with us. But if there are, listen to me, come in a little bit closer, guys. If there's anybody who has a homestead channel out there, if you will volunteer at this homestead or any homestead event, you will make a lot of friends. And I'll tell you, making friends is what it's all about when you're trying to grow your channel, because
Oh,
people
absolutely.
need to know you are. That's how we met. Stewart and Ashley was at the Okie Homestead Expo. And we have only developed that relationship since that time. And so we're needing volunteers there
Oh,
at the
absolutely.
Oklahoma Homestead Rendezvous.
Yep.
And I would just encourage anybody to reach out, especially on Facebook at the
Right.
Oklahoma Homestead Rendezvous page. Her name is Chris Thompson. It would be Chris and Dodge Thompson. And they will sure be happy to hear from you. And with that,
Absolutely.
bro,
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to take a quick second. I know we're getting on time, but I'm going to take a quick second just to kind of go through some of the things we missed in the chat. I'm going to mess this name up too. Yokana Sanders sent y'all hugs.
Johnny.
Johnny. Okay. I say again, when you don't know how.
No,
something
you were
pronounced.
fine.
Anyway,
Fine. We go by Johnny. She goes by Johnny though, so it's fine. Yes.
Johnny. I would go by that. Yeah, I'd shorten it too. Let's see. Jessica Preston said she loves the Magic Tree House books since they dip into history and science. It's love reading them.
Yeah.
Of course, very good information. My daughter, her two of her siblings did EPIC, when said it was definitely just like public school, just at home on the computer.
Yes.
And let's see, Jessica Preston, who's been chatting in quite a bit. Thank you, Jessica. Said they feel like they might end up saving money when they start homeschooling because their public school is constantly doing book fairs, after school activities, and so many things that cost extra, where the parents are asked or required to pitch in for. So that kind of comes out of that too.
Well,
and mom
one
said
other
hi.
thing you might not think about is all the clothes and schools. Yeah, or Stuart's mom said hi. But it's true. Like all the school, you have to get all these new things all the time for school. And when you homeschool, you need your play clothes, like you would put on after school, and you need, you have go into town type clothes too, but you don't need as much stuff. Like it doesn't, you don't have to get all new stuff all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of parents homeschool
right,
in their pajamas.
especially when you've got social pressures to get the latest and greatest new tennis shoe.
Oh man, yeah,
Right.
or whatever.
It was that way.
I seen a thing the other day that said, how do you make your how do you make your homeschool kids feel normal? Push them out in the hallway and make fun of what they're wearing, and because that's what happens. There's pressure, and surviving in Alabama had kind of early on, before he had to take off out of there for volleyball practice, talked about the financing. He said his oldest took out loans, talking about college when we were talking about that. And then the others learned and got scholarships and and stuff like that to help pay for that. It is something very real to finance. And big shout out, thanks to everybody who jumped in on the chat with questions and stuff like that. It definitely helps feed into it. And Stewart and Ashley, thumbs up right there. Hit the speaking of thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit the like, hit the share, ring the bell. Get the word out there. That's how word gets out about what we're doing here. We have we want our platform to be heard, to be seen. And that takes channel growth. It's not so that we benefit, but just so that the message and the word gets out to more people. So it's very important to us.
Right. It goes back to your hashtag stronger together.
Yes.
Because that's what you guys are building up a community.
Stronger together. It does take the whole community. Absolutely. It takes the whole community to do this. We couldn't do what we do without the listeners, and certainly without our experts that come in and talk to us and give us our time, the people we've made friends with over the last year plus. And without those supporters, we couldn't do it.
Right.
So, Stewart, Ashley, any final thoughts before we sign off out of here?
Maybe give us a little bit about where they can find you.
Yeah. Give us your contact info.
So we have some classes coming up this month on our farm. You can find out about them on our Facebook page. So we are Restoration Farms. You can also contact us on all of our social media and email and all that stuff at Restoration Farming, on our link tree at Restoration Farming. I'll drop that in the chat. We will be starting our homeschool fall classes, and we'll be posting those later this week for things that we've got going on in the fall. And we'll be at both of those expos like we talked about also. So.
All right. Very good.
So yeah, Stewart, yeah, you can.
Is interested, and mathematics is a big one that people struggle with, especially homeschooling. But coming up in 2 weeks, I'm teaching an intensive algebra and geometry course to help their students and also catch on skills if they need it. So that is coming up in July.
Right. Okay. There's the link. Right. Okay. Yeah. You'll be able to get that over. Okay. Yeah. We'll get that put in there. And
You can find us on
Mr. P, if you can get that up, that'd be great. Anyway, yeah, that link, yeah, there it is right there. All right, there's the link, Restoration Farming. Of course, you can find them on Facebook and on YouTube. Restoration Farms. They do lives and stuff. Right, and all their resources, all their classes that they have coming up, you definitely don't want to miss out on that. Like I said, my hat size has to be. I have to loosen my hat every time we meet because my head's going to grow with knowledge. And
that's why I don't wear a hat.
Well, hey, to each their own. But I must have a hat. God made a lot of pretty scalps. Mine wasn't one of them. But anyway. No, listen, hey, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate everybody tuning in. And listen, to all the parents out there that are considering homeschooling, I know that Jessica Preston said that, that they were encouraged by what we said tonight to go forward in that homeschooling thing. So there was encouragement there, and they appreciate it very much. So, just remember that you're not alone in your concerns, any fears you may have. Almost every parent has probably had those concerns. And they've successfully navigated these challenges, much like Stewart and Ashley have. So seek out the resources, support groups, educational materials, because only you care about your child enough that you can provide that rich, personalized education for your child. Your dedication to your child's learning is a testament to your commitment to their future. Stay positive, seek support when needed, and believe in your ability to create a nurturing and effective learning environment. Homeschooling can be rewarding and fulfilling experience for both you and your child, fostering a unique and close-knit educational bond. Learning is for life. And with that, as we always say here, we are stronger together. And as we say at the bottom of each and every episode, prepare for the unexpected and
keep it local.